let's see, Dr. Poe from Northern Kentucky Education Council continues to join us, so it's great to have Randy with us. Natalie Rupert from Kenton County Library is part of the conversation today as a guest, and she's been able to provide some great information previously. Terry Von Handendorf from Gateway is joining us, and I saw Stephanie Layton creep in here, so thanks a lot, everybody, for joining us today. Appreciate it and looking for a great conversation. I also want to take just a quick moment to make a shout out to one of our members, Owen County Public Schools was named the Outstanding Business of the Year in Owen County. Dr. Stafford has really been working hard to get them above the bar and beyond our expectations. So we're really excited to hear that they won that award. We're very excited to have them part of the WIB board also. So congratulations to he and his staff. So job well done there. So kicking the meeting off for sure. I'm going to ask, is there anybody that needs to self-identify before we move forward? Okay, great. So next step on the agenda is to approve the minutes from the previous meeting. Is there any discussion or can I have a motion to approve?
So moved, Carissa.
Thank you, Carissa. A second, please.
It's Connie Schnell. Approved.
Connie, thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. All in favor, please say or raise your hand. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, great. All right. So that's moved. Next is programming. Corey is going to give us an update and also from the operators highlights. And then also we're still in the process of certifying a number of different access points. So Tara and Corey will talk a little bit through that. So Corey, you want to go ahead and kick us off, please?
Sure, thanks, Dave.
Hey, Corey. I'm sorry to interrupt you. One really quick administrative item. My screen is frozen, so I cannot see the chat. So just in case anybody needs something, feel free to email me or text me. And then if David can grab the Brighton Center slides from the folder, then Corey can have a visual. Sorry about that.
No, that's great. Thanks, Tara. And David, if it's easier for you, I have it up either way. If you want to pull it up or let me share my screen, either way.
Oh, okay. I'll let you share your screen. Oh, actually, it's not letting me. I'll pull it up real quick.
Great. I'll be brief, and then if anyone certainly has any questions, feel free to reach out. It's a lot of information that I'm going to try to get through in about 5 minutes. So.
Corey, I let you should be able to share it now.
Oh, great. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so what you see in front of you is numbers served during the month of November at our Kentucky Career Center in Covington and our Career Center in Florence. I wanted to bring these numbers to the Business Service Committee's attention because, as you all recall, we decided to restore in-person services on November 2nd at each of these locations. And in my opinion, that was a very wise decision because we've been able to engage with quite a number of individuals through those services. I want to quickly say too that these numbers on this slide represent, again, Covington and Florence. We have additional locations as well that their numbers served are not represented on this slide. Currently, all of our locations are up and running. CVG and Williamstown have been open for services since August. Carrollton opened in October. and as I mentioned, Covington and Florence as of November 2nd. So this represents numbers served for each week in November. The leftmost bar represents total numbers served. That includes both phone calls and walk-ups. The next bar is, and you'll see the bars are in order of the categories below. So the next bar represents our unemployment related inquiries, whether by phone or walk up. Next is the number of job seekers. Next is our broken down by phone call, and then finally walk up. So you'll see that the fourth and fifth bars, the phone calls and walk ups, equal the left bar, the total number served. The number of unemployment related inquiries represent about 85% of our touch points. That's not unexpected. In total, we served 1,658 customers during the month of November by phone or by walk-up, which is really great. That's just Covington and Florence. There's another 105 that were served during the month of November collectively through the other locations. Some lessons learned throughout November. Number one is it's way less of a intimidating process as we expected. So I know there's a lot of angst across the state in terms of opening their doors, so to speak, for fear of being overwhelmed. That has not been our experience. The number of walk-up customers has been more than manageable, and the number of phone calls has been steady. I'll say busy, but certainly manageable as well. And we've been able to successfully address those customer needs, whether even if it's unemployment, we advise on the appropriate process for those folks to follow and give them the information that we're able to. For the most part, our main goal is to have those conversations with walk-up customers and callers to get them into employment. If they're not already employed, we want to direct those conversations in a way that gets those customers engaged with the services that we are able to provide, which would be primarily job seeker services. And I'll stop there and then answer any questions if anybody has any. But thanks for the time.
Hey, Corey, this is Dave. Sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Just a real quick question. From a Career Center employee or support staff, any concerns about worker safety on their part or anything that we need to support from the board perspective?
Not so far, Dave. I appreciate you bringing that up. It's certainly been on the radar. We want to make sure everybody's safe. To this point, I can safely say that there have been 0 customers who have walked through our doors who have been agitated or have made anyone feel unsafe.
Okay, yeah. So mask using and nose coverage is all covered?
I'm sorry. Yeah,
okay.
From that perspective, I was thinking from an angry customer perspective.
Well, I was thinking both angry, frustrated, and from a safety perspective.
Sure. From a safety perspective, all of our staff, of course, are wearing masks at all time, and we have social distancing in place. From a customer perspective, if they come in and they're not already wearing a mask, we have them immediately available right inside the door for them to put one on. That's not been an issue so far. I would say 95% of the people coming in already have a mask on.
Great.
No one has complained about being asked to put a mask on if they haven't. And for customers who are coming in for one-on-one appointments, which are limited because we're trying to offer all of our services in a virtual way. But the customers who do not have access to technology and are coming in for one-on-one appointments, we follow the protocol as we do with staff. They have their temperature taken before entering the building, and they sign off on the checklist to say that they have not experienced any of the symptoms that are common for COVID. So
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome.
Do we want to move to the certification piece?
Yes, please, if you could.
Yep.
Move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I can just kind of get us started, and Corey, I know, has done this before too, so hopefully we'll move you guys through this quickly. Just for those of you that aren't familiar, the WIB, makes efforts to engage with our entire 8-county region. And so we have been working, Corey has been working really closely with as many partners as possible to make sure that our community members can connect with the Career Center no matter where they are. And this time, we've really stepped up the virtual services, which I think has been great. But it's also made very clear to us how many members of our community just are not able to access those virtual services due to lack of computer, lack of Wi-Fi, et cetera. So we think it's really timely to add these. A couple of them are additional access points, and then to make sure that the existing ones are really meeting requirements. Corey, do you want to kind of go forward then and introduce? And David, we have this in the packet for each of the individual locations, just the same handouts that everybody on the board already received.
Sure, thanks, Tara. So today we have 3 additional access point certifications up for review and approval. One of those was an existing access point already, and that would be the Kentucky Career Center in Carrollton. As a reminder to the committee, even after whether a comprehensive center, an affiliate center, or an access point center receives certification, that certification needs to be renewed every 3 years. And so our Carrollton location is up for, well, technically this is going to be the initial certification for this particular location in Carrollton. So that's one access point that's up for consideration to certify as an access point. And then 2 brand new locations, to Tara's point, in an effort to have a physical presence in all parts of the 8-county region. We are seeking to certify both Pendleton County Public Library in Falmouth and Owen County Public Library in Owenton as Career Center access points.
So I think we're going to take these one by one. The first one on your agenda is the Owen County Public Library. I was able to attend a walkthrough process with the librarian, with staff from the KCC, and with WIB member Dr. Robert Stafford, who I'm pretty sure is on today's call.
Yes, I think I saw a note from him.
Great. And so we were able to identify that the location met all of the requirements for an access point, and was also just a very welcoming and beautiful facility, by the way, a huge asset to that community. Did anyone have any questions about the materials that you received?
Tara, I guess the only question I have, and this is relative to all of them, is are we going to be able to monitor the utilization of each location so that we can make sure that we're providing the service to the community and to the business partners and to the facility itself, make sure that it's being utilized correctly?
Yeah, that's a great question. Corey has already done a great job integrating the staff from each of these candidate access points into the KCC Partners Group. So they have attended trainings already and will be receiving all of the professional development opportunities that all of the KCC partners receive. Also, this will be a little bit of a passive and active location. So the materials will be available to the public all the time. So while we will not be able to track, how many people picked up a brochure, for example, all of the libraries, and I say all because Erlanger branch of Kenton County Library was already certified by the board. They all have specific contacts who will be the primary contact for workforce at the library. And so those individuals will be tracking how many individuals they work with and speak with, how many they, forward on to additional programming or just provide resources that they have on site. And so to that level, we'll be able to track them the same way that we're already tracking the in-person on-site services provided. Also, there will be members of the Career Center staff who will have established hours that they will be on site. They actually do that already. It's just because they're not official access points, you haven't been receiving the tracking data. So this will really make official some of the work that's already been going on.
Okay, thanks. And then just one procedural question. Do we need to have an action for each one of these, or can we do them all as one lump sum?
If no one had any specific questions, you could probably just pass all three of them together if you would like.
Okay,
as
well,
long
let's
as
try
the
to do
motion-
that first.
Yep, as long as the motion indicates all three.
Okay, great. So did we want to go through the other information for Pendleton and the Carrollton KCC?
I can do that just very briefly. In Pendleton County, WIB member Shara Dunlap and I met with the KCC staff and the local library contact there. Again, beautiful facility, incredible outlet and opportunity for the community there. They actually have children that, when schools are in a more normal functioning, ride the bus to the library after school and engage in programming. Again, very accessible, great carve out in their community section for the workforce materials, and I think they'll be a huge asset to the network. And then in Carrollton, that location is relatively new. They've moved a couple of times in Carrollton, but they've been there the entire time I've been director, so it's not very, very new. Haley and Elizabeth and Corey, the staff members there, were able to meet with Lisa Morris, WIB member, and I actually yesterday, so it's fresh in our minds, to be able to answer any questions. And again, it's a very accessible location in the city of Carrollton, we're able to talk about the services they provide. They actually have a clothing closet where people can come called Proudly Professional and actually access clothing that would be applicable to the various kinds of work that that person might do that they might not be able to get on their own, everything from scrubs to steel-toed boots. So very, very excellent resource for the community there.
Okay, well, great. So can I receive a motion from the floor for acceptance? Does somebody want to make that call?
I'll make
Sybil
that motion.
Murphy.
Okay, I'm not sure who did that. Everybody spoke at once. Tara, did you catch somebody there?
Sybil was
Okay.
maybe first, or at least I heard her
All
better.
right. Okay, so the motion is up for certification of these 3 locations. I heard one. Can I have a second, please?
I'll second. This is Michelle.
All right, thank you, Michelle. All in favor, vote aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Okay, motion's carried. Congratulations to those 3 facilities. I have to say that I'm pretty proud of our ability to engage flood libraries locally and regionally. I think it's a tremendous resource. And they all have shown the ability to go above and beyond the partnership and the customer service. So I think it speaks highly of Northern Kentucky's region and also of the WIB as a high-performing board. Congratulations to you guys. This is really well done.
Thanks, Dave.
Yeah, thanks for everybody, especially the staff. The next area on the agenda is our partnership dialogue. Generally, that's information coming from GROW NKY. I did happen to see Amanda on the meeting call-in. We've had Lisa generally give us an update, but Amanda, are you going to be giving us an update today?
Hi, yes, I am on here, and I joined today as, I guess, a guest in place of Lisa. She wasn't
Okay.
able to attend, and she thought it might be good for me to join the group.
Okay, great. So can you bring us up to date on what's going on in the grow world?
Sure. I don't know if you want across the board or just high level, and I might defer to some others on here as well, but kind of high level, if you guys did not already receive information, there is a Grow NKY partner update convening that is taking place next week on December 15th. That'll be held from 1 to 3. I passed along the information to Tara, so if she's able to get it out to the group, she can let you guys know. But for anyone that's on here that is familiar with the Grow NKY Workforce Collective of partners, I think it'd be a great opportunity for you to receive an update of some of the things that have been happening and just have more of a discussion on sort of the future of the collective. And we're actually going to have a guest come and present from the Lumina Foundation that is an expert on collective impact and talk a little bit to the partners just about the impact and the value of a collective impact approach to this type of work. So certainly if anybody would want to join that, I think that would provide you quite a bit of high level updates. We will also be releasing a Grow NKY progress report. It'll be the first annual report of sorts that we've released for Grow NKY. So be looking for that coming out as well. That'll be sent either on the 15th, or we may get it out to everyone that morning so you can have it in hand before the event. As far as, I guess, success measures related to the 2 areas that would be most pertinent to this group, which would be college and career readiness or adult career readiness and lifelong learning. In the college and career readiness front, we actually had a meeting today with a group of about, I think, 20 pilot partner organizations that are going to be piloting the My Career E3 work-based learning platform. That platform is created and ready. We are doing a test pilot phase with these partners for the next 2 weeks to kind of work out any kinks before that is launched publicly to the masses. So certainly stay tuned and look for that coming in front of you if you are a community partner, an employer, or a representative of a school district. If you're not familiar, that platform is going to be a centralized source where all work-based learning opportunities for students in grades 9 through 12, and then eventually expanding beyond that, can be housed in one centralized location so that employers and schools can all connect under one roof. There's a project team, myself, Lorena Moore, John Baines, which I think many of you know, and Shelley Baker and Kieran Chesser have been working on getting this project off the ground. So there's a really fantastic team in place, and we've done a lot of work here in the last few months despite the COVID setbacks. So we're excited to see that project move forward. Outside of that, I know Corey shared some information already related to the role of him leading Pillar 3, which is adult career readiness and lifelong learning. I did also share with Tara just some updates that will be featured regarding some of the outcomes from partners in that focus area. They will be in the progress report, but they are excited about the success that they're seeing in getting more certifications in the 16 identified ETPL programs. So a lot of connections there to the work you guys are doing. Those are probably my high level. There's a lot of going on at all times, but those are the things probably most relevant to this group.
Well, great. Any questions? I do want to say that Amanda, the job that you guys are doing is great. Really appreciate it. You really helped to move us along quite a bit as a region. Later in the conversation today, we're going to talk a lot about industry certifications. I think Grow's role and some of the stuff that you talked about is going to kind of intertwine. So I would encourage you to stay on, and probably if anybody's got questions, it'll probably come up during that point anyway.
Okay.
So if that's okay, unless anybody's got a burning question, I want to move on to the data analysis portion and go through that so that we can start the conversation.
Sounds
Any
good.
questions? Okay, thanks, Amanda. Tara and David, do you guys want to go through our KPI report, please?
Yeah, and David's going to share that. We sent you a multi-page report. We're not going to go over all of that today because of our longer conversation, but if anyone has any questions, please reach out and let us know. I think David's just going to give a few highlights with the KPI. For those of you that are guests today, we know that this is a colorful report that can feel a little overwhelming. So again, if you'd like to talk more about the things that we are tracking, just keep in mind, these are the key performance indicators that the WIB is responsible for meeting in terms of our federal funding and our monitoring to the Commonwealth of Kentucky. So it might look a little different than what you're expecting. David, do you want to go ahead?
Okay, and like Tara said, I'm going to kind of go over the first page quickly. We at the WIB, we look at this quite a bit, but then I do have some more of those like deep dives, like the multi-page KPIs that we've been talking about. But just kind of from the top down, these are our local advertised job postings. I don't have an analysis of the job postings ready yet, but they're on par with where they were last year. There's actually been more job postings, especially this later part of the year during the economic recovery that we're about to have. Sorry. When we look at the labor market info, we see that unemployment has gone up. We've had fluctuating labor force and employment, labor participation, the state, oh shoot, I wish I had the other document pulled up. The employer outreach programs and activities, that's from NKWIBs, KCC, business service staff, that's business programs and activities with individual businesses. And we are definitely on par with where we were last year. We've actually exceeded some of our numbers from before. Employer hiring events and job fairs, those are online, virtual, in-person job fairs and hiring events. Tours are on-site and virtual. Tours are very important to employee retention. And I'll get into more details in a moment on this. Basic career services is where we really want to kind of focus though. Those are the in-person, on-site career services. We used to call those in the door. These do not count the many virtual workshops, online events that we've had. Individualized career services, those require WIOA eligibility and enrollment. And we're still on par with where we were this time last year. Career training services, that's like the next step from enrollment and eligibility. WIOA youth paid internships, we track those a little bit separately. We track those by the sector that the interns are placed in. And even though we haven't hit the 50% mark, we're still kind of on par with interns. That's kind of up and down over the years. Outcomes of WIOA participants, these are updated quarterly. So this was is updated as of October. And you can see that we've met or exceeded all of the negotiated performance numbers that we make with the state. Interviews, we've had large numbers of applicant interviews because of our job fairs and hiring events. We will probably exceed what we did last year. Same thing with job placements. We've had a big spike in job placements over the last 60 days. Customer satisfaction, job seeker and employer, we're very much on par with where we were last year. We get most of our job seeker numbers currently from hiring event surveys, where in the past we had kiosk surveys. We had much more numbers on that. But we've ramped up our employer satisfaction and how we survey employers. Okay, this is the part I'm kind of a little excited about. I want to look at the kind of the deep dive pages. I have some little notes here that I made where we've already updated this and added axis on the left side. But this kind of shows the circle graphs on the KPI, and we have them broken out by fiscal year. You can kind of see a trend, and you just see that overall increase in programs and activities. Programs are things like setting up tours, helping with hiring events, and so on. We have a county breakdown here. There is a virtual dashboard where this can be drilled down into more. Every page on the dashboard can be printed out. And like the KPI, this is through October 31st. The next pages in the packet are where we start looking at the basic career services, workshops, hiring events. So on that first page of the KPI in the basic services bar, you see that we have served 448 people throughout the fiscal year. And those are those in-person, on-site, events, which when we break it down, we had 23 career services. So I specifically know that these career services were almost all at CVG, and those are onboarding. Somebody gets interviewed, they get hired, we let them use our facilities to do onboarding at CVG. Some of the other career services are job search. Somebody comes in to use the computer to actually look for a job. Trying to think some of the other ones. Talent development services. That's when a customer meets face to face with one of our talent development specialists. 65 hiring events. Those are employer driven, but they're on site. They're facilitated by KCC staff. And then 2 workshops. We had a Trades to Success workshop, but that's that breakdown of that 448. Those are the and I'm going to kind of repeat that, but that's that in-person, on-site. In the old days, we called it the in-the-door number. And then the next page is just another analysis of that exact same dashboard where I just wanted to focus on just the hiring events. So since the beginning of the fiscal year, we've had a total of 85 hiring events that have served 544 people. And we can see that like 13 of them were at the employer, 64 at CVG, 1 at Florence, and 7 of them were online. The next drill down into that basic career services is the overall basic career services. That is all in-person and virtual events, which we've had 124 and we've served 1,011 people. And then this was just one more kind of specific drill down in that I wanted to see exactly what CVG was doing since the beginning of the fiscal year. And CVG has been 79 of those hiring events, 15 career services, lots of in-person on-site events at CVG. It's a very, I don't want to say insular, but it's a little microcosm of employers and businesses there at CVG. And we have an interactive dashboard that we're kind of cleaning up a little bit. I'd like to talk to Dave and Tara after this about where we can embed that for the board to look at.
Yeah, and we can talk about that. We can talk about that going forward. Unfortunately, we're going to have to kind of hold there for now. But if anybody,
and then the last page is the glossary. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay.
Great. Thanks, David. Appreciate
You're
it.
welcome.
And that's a lot of data for everybody to absorb, and certainly for David to assimilate in a very short time. So if you've got any questions outside of this meeting, don't hesitate to direct them to David or Tara or myself.
Right.
And try to get those answers to you. And as David mentioned, I'd like to see if we can make that information a little bit more simple so that we can grasp what's going on quickly as a board, and then use the background information as a deep dive as needed. But thanks a lot, David. I know that it's a lot of work that goes into putting that into place.
Thanks.
Okay, if it's okay with everybody, I want to move into the industry certification portion of the meeting. And just as some background, there was an email that Tara sent back out to board members on December the 3rd that really talked a little bit about some of the roles that the WIB has in the processes that we're going to be talking about. There were a number of different documents that were attached to that that I think as we go through the conversation or as you reflect later outside the meeting will be really helpful for you. One of the documents is a PowerPoint of the KDE, or the Kentucky Department of Education's career and technical education process. And it outlines a little bit of the role of the WIB in relationship to some of these certifications. Also, the list of certifications that the KDE compiles are utilized by the schools in their programs of studies. And I want to thank Dr. O'Hara and Dr. Chesser for helping us pull together a number of different links so that you can see some school year activity documentation. They're called programs of study that the schools try to support. And I think that there's a couple of great examples in there, but almost every school system is required to have this type of documentation available for students. And then finally, we want to make sure that the conversation is a little bit broader than just high school students and students going into any kind of accelerated studies. We also have youth and adults that are looking for job seekers or that are considered job seekers. So somehow we would like this conversation to hit all of those groups so that we're not creating 3 or 4 unique lists for different portions of the population. So if you look at today's agenda, some of the things that we wanted to talk about was, of course, our role in making those recommendations. We also want to make sure we're clear on what the workforce needs are in our high demand sectors that we focus on, what kind of credentials are required or very helpful from a business partner perspective, where those credentials or certifications can be obtained, and how easily that can happen. What's the best matter of delivering for high school students or for adults? How do we roll that into some of our trainings, training providers or ETPLs? How do we make sure that the certification list is up to date and important enough for the businesses to adhere to? A lot of certifications are moving on a yearly or bi-yearly basis. And I want to make sure that that if we're asking our candidates to obtain those certifications, that they make sense for the business community. What you'll find as we talk today is the process that the WIB is going to use to make those recommendations is a very long and bureaucratic process. And it would be very easy for a company as nimble as CVG or St. E or some of our logistics providers to change certification requirements quickly. And we could be up to a year behind in getting those certifications offered to candidates. So how do we prevent that from happening? How do we continually engage our employers to maintain a list of requirements for both the WIB and the educators? And so I'm going to let the conversation start holistically from those points. The only thing that I want to say before we start is that I believe, and this is my opinion, that the educators and the educational partners have done a tremendous amount of work to get this in place. I personally have been a little bit disappointed on the business side of it. There have been a number of good business partners that have stepped up. But when we look at the thousands of business activities that go on in this region, to have a handful of businesses providing feedback is not going to make the difference that we need as a community. So today I want to hear directly from the educational partners and some of the business partners, but primarily from the business or educational partners, so that we can facilitate over the course of the next couple of months to our business partners what's needed. Okay?
Hey,
Tara,
hey, Dave.
yeah, can you go ahead?
Yeah, absolutely. So I know this meeting has been forwarded to a lot of people from other people, which is awesome. And we are so happy to have all of you here. But I just want to make sure we just kind of say a couple of things just to make sure everybody understands the role of the WIB. I actually made a PowerPoint. I kind of hesitate to show it because my device is acting a little finicky today, but I'll try. Yep, no, my screen's frozen. That's okay. So basically, just as a reminder, the WIB, so we get this federal funding and we are charged with providing direct services to clients that qualify. And we're also charged with, providing the operations of the Career Center. We subcontract that work, which is required of us. And the subcontractor is Brighton Center. And because that framework is already in place, the legislature created, I don't know, I think it was about 3 years ago, maybe, a process where the WIBs, again, already in place across the state, would play a role in the creation of the CTE, so career technical education, we would play a role in helping elicit feedback from local companies in that list that then goes to the Kentucky Workforce Innovation Board, and then eventually to the Kentucky Department of Education. We do have Kylie Whitaker with us today. Thank you so much, Kylie, for joining us. And he's our primary contact for that creation of that list. So if anybody has any questions for Kylie, you can just ask him directly, which is awesome. So, we have done this in the past. It's time to update it again. And we really want to make sure a few things. All of you are so involved in workforce, so we want to make sure that we're tying this into so many other efforts. And we also want to make sure that we don't just create, more work, that we're really using the feedback that we get about career pathways and industry certifications for our adult, youth, dislocated worker customers, that we're using it in our strategic planning process for our job seekers, for our employer services, all the different things that we and the Career Center are involved with. So that's probably all to kick it off. At the end of this meeting, what I would really like to leave with is some action items about how we can engage our local industry partners, our businesses and employers, in really getting feedback about what is it that they need, because that's really what it comes down to. Is we need to go through this extremely lengthy list and find out if these certifications are right, and if we need to add anything, if there's any gaps, or if there's anything that's just old and it needs to come off. And so how do we do that in a way that's not time burdensome, but really feels like an opportunity? So
Maybe if one of the educational partners can go through how they utilize the KDE details to help the students work through programs of studies.
I am happy to do that from a superintendent's perspective. And then also, as I don't know if any of you all know, I'm the superintendent of the Fort Thomas schools, but I was deputy superintendent, chief academic officer to Randy Poe over there. I was in Boone County for 10 years as we created Ignite and the North Kentucky Makerspace and early college and all those kinds of things. But I also chair GROW's Pillar 2, College and Career Readiness, and also worked with the Ed Council for, I guess, 11 years as chair of the College and Career Readiness Action Team. So have been heavily embedded in Northern Kentucky and how do we prepare our students for career readiness. So I'll just give just kind of the high level view of how this whole thing works and all the different systems or components that have to be taken into consideration. And I'm not going to get into too many details. But first of all, the state has a program of studies, as you see, which looks at all 16 career clusters and identifies very specific career pathways and courses that students could take. If they take 3 courses, they are considered preparatory. If they take 4 courses, they're considered completers. The only thing that really matters with that designation is funding through a program. Perkins funding and TEDS is a assessment system for collecting all those data. But what's really important for school districts is also the idea of accountability. And, we are judged, our state accountability for whether or not our school district is doing a good job is based on many factors, everything from the ACT to how well students do on reading and math, as well as how many students actually meet college and career accountability factors. The college factors have to do with AP, ACT, dual credit. We don't have to get into that. But the career accountability has to do with whether or not students did take those 3 courses. They actually don't have to take the 3 courses. They should, but they have to pass that industry certification. And so also what we're looking for at school districts for our accountability is how many students themselves, how many students are able to kind of click that off that they met that industry certification standard. So it's vitally important for school districts, not just because it's the right thing to do and students should be able to excel in one, actually we want both areas, but it also has to do with their accountability. I can tell you right now, we have 69% of students in Northern Kentucky, and that does include our counties of Owen, Gallatin, Carroll, 69% of students who are considered college or career ready, which means they have clicked off one of those criteria. So what we have to do in school districts is determine which of those career pathways we can support. And when I mean what ones we can support, meaning that we have to have the teachers who are certified to teach it. We have to be able to have enough of the courses that we can offer so students can get that preparatory or completer designation. So they have to be able to, we have to have enough students and enough courses so that in a pathway, they can take 3 of those courses or they can take the 4 courses. And then in addition, we do have to make sure they have access to that industry certification. Now, one of the things I said to Tara was that that industry certification does not necessarily mean they're ready to go out in industry and work. What it means is they have enough of a foundation in that general area that they are showing that they have some expertise. I'm sure you are aware of many of these pathways, such as pre-engineering, hybrid computer programming, culinary, some of those. We don't necessarily have any advanced manufacturing ones. We may have, and Francis can talk about this, we may have one in the Northern Kentucky area. Also logistics, those are kind of some new ones that we know we need to have. But primarily they're more in the business realm. I'm going to say fortunately or unfortunately, the one that we have the most students who are actually getting industry certs in is they get the MOS certification, which is really business admin. That's really a business support, you know, working as a receptionist kind of thing. They get that MOS in the business admin. And so it's meant to just be something that shows they're pretty deep into a career field. 2 examples real quick that you might not know about. We have some students in the media arts, so cinematography, or they get the Photoshop, you know, all the different things in media arts for graphic design or interactive media. I personally teach a CTE pathway. The other 2, they had 2 assistant superintendents, and I teach the teaching and learning pathway. So those are students who want to go into education as a career path, and they have to get those 4 courses, which also happen to be dual credit classes at NKU. And so they have to look at, schools have to look at what resources do we have in order to have particular pathways. And you probably saw in the link that Tara set, we have, I think, for example, 1314, just in Highlands High School, which has 1,200 students. So students take those pathways. You have to have enough teachers. You have to have the teachers that are certified. Places like Ignite have been able to use some occupation-based teachers. We also have ATCs, which have occupation-based teachers. So that's where that happens. A real quick thing, last year, some of you may have remembered, and Dave, you might have been part of this conversation too. One of the things we realized in Fort Thomas was we wanted to offer app development with Swift. And if many of you may know, Swift is the Apple, you know, the iOS app development tool. It was not on the list for Kentucky. Kentucky hadn't really even explored it. And so we had to kind of go a different route when Barb was with the WIB, and Brent Cooper really helped with this. And that was to actually talk to employers. Would you want to hire someone who had Swift certification? And they said yes. So we presented that information to Northern Kentucky WIB, and I believe somehow that got down to the state WIB, and that actually got added this year to the Kentucky certification, which we are ecstatic about, because so that's an example of how the Northern Kentucky WIB has so much power and influence on some of those more, you know, 21st century types of careers. So anyway, that's just a real quick example of how that works in a school district.
Karen, if I could just add to that, and I think that's a great example of the challenge that we have as a board, is that was identified 18 months ago, okay? So if you were a junior, you're SOL as far as getting that at a school in Northern Kentucky. But I think we realized that the Apple app development was, the usage was extreme between the employers. So 2 problems that came out of that, 2 gaps. One is the time to get it approved, but the second is that we had to ask the president of the Chamber of Commerce to go solicit this information. We shouldn't have to do that. We need to have our business partners coming to us or coming to you so that we can facilitate that a lot quicker. But we just can't be asking businesses every time. The businesses have to proactively tell us what they need. because they're going to change a lot quicker than we're going to understand that. So that's a great example, and thanks for bringing it up. Really appreciate it. Hey, Terry, I know that Gateway's got a role in this when we start talking about career ready and also some of the youth that may not be associated with a school directly, or they're displaced workers looking for different credentials. Can you talk a little bit about Gateway's role while we're doing this?
Sure. So Gateway relies heavily on our advisory committees to inform what industry certifications are the most relevant. The problem with that is that then we are, changing curriculum and end of program and end of course assessments based on a sampling of companies. So having this comprehensive list to go to that's up to date is really critical for us to make sure that we are offering the most relevant industry certs for our students. And it's also through the alignment with our secondary partners. So for example, Perkins just did a major revamp of how we are to tap Perkins 5 funds. So there is a group of us, Francis is on that group, that had a stakeholder meeting, and part of that process is to invite industry as well as the secondary schools and ask those exact questions. What are we all taking a look at what we are offering and what's missing? But again, when you're reporting out from just that meeting, it's a limited view. So having this comprehensive list that is up to date is really critical for us to make sure we're meeting the needs of the local workforce.
Okay, thanks. Francis, I didn't mean to skip over you, but is there anything that you can add from your perspective over in Kenton County?
Well, thanks, Dave. Just a few quick items. Our partnership with Gateway, the regional partnership with Gateway, I think is a key right now for our industry partners, because Kenton County, we're one of the largest school systems in the state, but we don't have a career tech school to send our scholars to. So we send them to Ignite, which is a career tech school, but the traditional format, having auto, diesel, building maintenance, we're looking at paralegal and lineman. When we see some of these programs that Gateway has to offer, we are trying to send our scholars there. So think about the old days when you'd send a high school kid for half a day to a vocational school. Well, we're sending them half a day to a college, and they're getting credentials and getting dual credit. So some of the things that we've done with Gateway, we've done an auto program, a diesel program, a building maintenance. We're looking at a paralegal. We're looking at a lineman for next year. All of these come with real industrial certifications. This is my second point, that are recognized in industry, as well as these kids are getting college classes because they're in college. It just has to be industrial classes. So we've got to be very careful, because a lot of the industrial certifications that we offer at the high school level are not recognized in the industry. So our kids are walking out of high school getting a piece of paper that doesn't take them anywhere. While our classes at Gateway and our programs at Gateway, they not only walk out with the dual credit, but they're walking out with real industrial certifications. So I think in Northern Kentucky, there's a lot of opportunities for all of the region to utilize Gateway and start programs there for dual credit. But I'll let Terry talk more about that. She's been a great partner in this.
Go ahead, Terry.
No, I was just going to say, as a result of this most recent regional Perkins meeting, it became very clear to all of us. We had representatives from Highlands and Boone and Kenton counties and the area technology centers that we really need to have an advisory committee for career and tech ed opportunities in the region, and to make sure we're not duplicating, and where we are at capacity at the area technology centers, where can Gateway step in to expand, and not just opportunities for a few students, but opportunities for all students. So I think, Francis, we're meeting next week just to talk about what may that look like with those stakeholders.
Okay, thanks. I'd like to call on Lorraine here. Lorraine is with Learning Grove. She has been involved with the GROW program, as Amanda talked a little bit about. She also has been very active with some of the schools from the River Cities project. And part of the goal of that project was to obtain certifications in the industries that were identified as part of the school's needs. And I worked closely with Lorraine over the last couple of years, and there were some challenges in getting those certifications. And Lorraine, I think it'd be great to get your perspective on where we're at, what happened, and maybe some opinions on from the on the ground level. What are some of the things that the WIB can help you guys with?
Sure. I guess where my attention was drawn to all of this was when I started with the River City schools, and the students were dual enrolled with Gateway to complete the logistics program, and their certifications were the CLA and CLT. And when I looked at the list from the KDE, neither of those are listed in that list. But yet we had students attending. We had like 32 students attending, at least from the River City schools last year. And so that was when I first started to talk about this, because the counselors were saying that the students, a lot of them couldn't get this career and career readiness kind of tick mark because the certs weren't listed. And so this year, I know Ignite now has a logistics program, and we still have logistics students from the River City schools going, but they're not doing the CLA and CLT now because the employers aren't necessarily looking for it. However, the students are still attending and being dual enrolled and still will not be able to click that career and tech certification box. So I'm concerned that those students and schools will not get that recognition because they're not doing the certs, but they are doing the time, if you know what I mean. So I'd be interested to see what the partners around the table would think on that. And I know Terry and I talked about it also.
And Dave, I'd like to add to what Lorraine's saying. It's the same thing that we do with the Builders Association. We have 50 to 60 kids each year getting the builder certification, but it doesn't count for any particular certification either. So that's another area.
Thank you, Randy. If I could add to that a little bit, Dave, if you look at the, we're sort of like a square peg trying to fit in this little round hole over here, and it doesn't really work for us. If you look at what they consider to be industry ready, it's NCCER certifications, which if you are a commercial builder like Turner or Messer, you need some NCCER certified people. If you're Jim Cutter, you don't care at all about NCCER certification. Or name any other, small residential remodeler or builder, that it's irrelevant to them. And from my perspective, the only way I could get students to pass those NCCER certifications is for them to sit in a seat and listen to a class day after day after day after day. And that's the exact opposite of what, first of all, this population of students needs to learn. They're active learners, but it's also exactly the opposite of what we are meant to do. And they still could come out. I've always said I'm a great example of why this is a bad idea. If you asked me to pass an NCCER test, I can do that because I'm a good classroom learner, but you should not let me remodel your house because I cannot do a single thing with a hammer and a nail. And so it's exactly, there is nothing in our arena that aligns to that competency-based, skill-based assessment. Now, I will say that, they have, the KDE has tried and they've added a number of hours on a job that can be a box checker for a student. So if you can work 500 hours in a field, then you can check that box. The problem is 500 hours is a lot of hours when you're a high school student. And in my field particularly, I think it's less so maybe in some of the other ones, it's really hard for employers to put someone who's not 18 on a job site because they're not safe. So it's a catch-22. We want them to have jobs, but they can't get jobs because they don't have skills. And we can't give them the skills because you can't check the box if you're focused on building skill, not classroom-based competency. So this is a huge, this is the kind of thing that keeps me up at night, because it could mean the death of my program ultimately, and that would be a travesty. And there has to be a way that we can understand. And it's not the education partners, it's the system, I guess you could say, that is at a disadvantage, because, Dr. Poe is the one who brought this to your attention. And I see lots of you shaking your head. So, but this is major in my arena, and it could mean the end of my program for the high school students.
Right. I think everything that you guys have all said is spot on. Whether it's Karen or Francis or Randy or Lorraine or Vicky, and Terry certainly, all indicate that we need to gather our forces and figure out how to solve this. But Kylie, I noticed that you were on the call, and I don't mean to put you on spot, and I haven't met you, so I apologize in advance. But I'd like to hear some feedback from you. I can't imagine that Northern Kentucky's concerns are any different than any of the other regional concerns, but I want to focus on what Vicky just talked a little bit about, as far as in the seat certification versus hands-on, which is what our employers are actually looking for, and which some of the schools are challenged to support. Is there any insight that you can provide us with where other regions have looked at this problem and tackled it, or are we on uncharted territory? Which I kind of doubt, but thought I'd ask anyway. Kylie, are you there?
I am. Yes, I've heard everything you guys have said. So let me start out. Let me go back for just a second, because I want you to understand the system first. And I'm not trying to be defensive when I say this to you guys, but the fact of the matter is, legislation was passed, and that legislation tells me exactly what I can and cannot count for accountability, period. Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
There's no, the legislation right now reads exclusively include, which means if they didn't write it in there, then we can't count it in there. All right. So that is not and like I said, I'm not trying to be defensive, but that's not a KDE decision. That's not an anything decision. That is actual state legislation that must be followed for this. And so while I hear the concerns and the reasoning behind those concerns, decisions like that are up to the legislators. So that is where I would first encourage you guys to start, is talking with your local legislators about the laws that they've written that I then have to abide by for this process. So, and that's not to throw anybody under the bus. That's not to be rude about it. It's just it's a fact of life that there is legislation, and we have to follow that because that is what the law is. And so our legislators are open to conversations. Sometimes they just don't know the things that you guys are talking about here, and just need to be better informed by especially their business community. The more we can leverage our business and employers to talk with legislators about what they need and what they need our accountability systems to look like, the better off this is going to be for our kids. And for me, I'm a kids first kind of guy. I think Francis would vouch for me on that. So I want to do what's right for kids. I want to get kids what they need, but I also have a job and legislation that I can't afford to get fired because I got to support my 2 kids as well. So, but anytime we can, leverage our business and industry partners to really talk to our legislators about what high school accountability system should measure or should award points to, or that kind of stuff, the better off we're going to be. So with the legislation that is currently written, there's only 4 ways to be career ready. The first is through an industry cert, and that's what you guys have been talking about. The problem with industry certs is that very few employers include the actual certifications that they want students to have in their job posting. And that makes my life, because I'm a data person, that makes my life extremely difficult when what the employer wants isn't showing up in any of their job posting data. Take the SWIFT example that was given a little bit ago. Statewide, only 2 job postings have asked for SWIFT, 2. Out of all the job postings in our state, statewide, not just in Northern Kentucky, but the whole state, only 2 have included SWIFT in it. That is extremely hard for someone like me at the state level to then say, this is something that we need to encourage our students to earn, because there's no data to back that up. So this process was put in place, this legislation, KRS 158.6455, to give the WIBs more of a voice and to keep us from having to use just job posting data. And the hope was that through the WIBs that we would get that employer voice to say, hey, even though we didn't include this in any of our job postings, this is something we value and want our students to earn. And then the WIBs can pass that on to the KWIB, and the KWIB can pass that on to me at the Department of Ed. And I can use that as justification to put something on our list. God, I would love for us to encourage our business and industry partners to put more of this stuff in their job postings. But at the very least, what you've been saying about getting them more involved in this kind of conversation and telling you guys what they would like to see, that's the better off this list is going to get. But at the end of the day, it's still a list of industry certs. So that's one method, is industry certifications. And unfortunately, NCCER is one of the big ones that get turned in by our business and industry, because the big business and industry partners are the ones that usually turn stuff in. It's not the small business and industry partners that we hear from. So that's really where I have to go with that. The second method is through a state created test that awards college credit to the students that they pass it. So at the end of, say, it's not the best example, but culinary is one most people know about. So take culinary. At the end of that, there's a test that was developed by the state. And if students pass that, then we have certain colleges that will give them college credit hours for having passed that assessment. We had to get rid of, because of the same legislation I was talking about, we had to get rid of all the ones that didn't award that college credit. So we used to have one for construction, we had one for manufacturing, we had one for automotive, but none of the colleges were awarding any college credit for those. And like Francis said, I don't want students to get a piece of paper for a piece of paper's sake. I want them to get a piece of paper that's going to do something for them when they leave our high schools. And so we eliminated any of them that didn't have college credit. So our post-secondary partners, we rely on them really heavily to say to us, here's what we're willing to give college credit for, and here's what we're not willing to give college credit for. And at the Department of Ed, we then have to eliminate those that we cannot get college credit for students. So those are 2 of the mechanisms. The third mechanism is through an apprenticeship. And we are pushing apprenticeship as hard as we possibly can. And at the end of those apprenticeship programs, the students awarded what's called the track certificate, which in most places can count up to 1,000 hours of that apprenticeship just by earning that track certification. And so that's more than just a piece of paper for those kids. It's a piece of paper that gets them 1,000 hours towards an apprenticeship program. And we're more than happy to talk to any businesses about offering more of those opportunities to students. But I'll just be honest with you guys. Statewide, we only had 150 seniors last year or the year before that got a track certificate, because we don't have a whole lot of businesses and industries that are able to take students into an actual full-blown registered apprenticeship program, or that are willing to. So that's just a fact of the matter. So we don't have a lot that are earning that one, but that is a route where it's basically all on the job training in that situation, which is what I heard. I think Vicky talking about was that on the job stuff. So, but unfortunately, there still has to be something, and the only thing that was allowed to us in the legislation was to award credit for being part of an apprenticeship. So that's the third method. The last method is through dual credit classes. And so by working with our post-secondary partners, we've tried to embed as much dual credit into our CTE pathways as we possibly can. And students earning dual credit in those pathways are awarded that career readiness status as well. So, but the theme here is that all 4 of those methods end with the student earning something that does something for them when they leave our high schools. And it doesn't just count in a high school accountability system to earn points for accountability. They're all meaningful paper or experiences that are going to mean something for the student when they leave high school and go on to whatever's next for them, whether that's a job or whether that's an associate's or bachelor's or master's, or doctorate for that matter, because we do have pathways that lead to lawyers and doctors and stuff as well. So, but everything's meaningful. I think Vicky mentioned a fifth option that used to be there, but the legislation this past year deleted that. So we had a fifth option where it was on the job, number of hours on the job that we could award career readiness for, but the legislation, Senate Bill 158, put in the words must exclusively include, and they did not include on the job training as one of those things that we could award credit for. And so that fifth option is no longer actually an option in accountability anymore. That was something that KDE had developed to go more into this route that Vicky was talking about with the on the job, getting that actual hands-on experience. And we tried to incorporate something for that, but it was removed per the legislation. And so once again, not throwing people under the bus, but just being very factual, my hands are tied on that. I have no mechanism to award any credit for that now in the new accountability system. So that was a lot. I'm sorry, David. You asked me to talk, and I like to talk, so I apologize. So, but that's a lot of information. But this process that you guys are doing is absolutely critical for two things. One, it tells business and industry we actually care about what they put in their job postings, but we also tell business and industry that we want our students to earn stuff that they care about. And so in both cases, we are telling our business and industry, we want your voice in this process and we need your voice in this process.
Thank you, Kylie, and I certainly appreciate your bluntness in telling us that your role. I think it's perfect and it's refreshing. So thank you very much. And I think that the way that you put the conversation helps us try to decide which way that we need to go as a WIB in order to support the educators. Like I said before at the very beginning of the meeting, I think the educators and the partners around the educational pyramid have all done a phenomenal job of taking what they've been dealt and making it workable. I think the gap, as you said, Kylie, is getting the business partners engaged to making sure that the credentials are meaningful. And as Francis put, that he said many times before, it's just not a little piece of paper that doesn't mean anything to anybody except the person that spent the time putting the hours into it. So I think at this point, I want to stay on schedule, but I also would like to just for the last couple of moments, ask the educational partners, is there anything that the WIB should do quickly to help you guys out on this right away? I think that we're going to try to decide a process and figure out how to get out to the business community. But if you had to prioritize the first thing or the first couple of steps from an educational perspective, what would you suggest to us?
Dave, this is Francis. I have just one thing that I request. Maybe Kylie can help on this. First of all, Kylie's been a great partner for everybody in the state. If y'all don't know Kylie Whitaker, he's phenomenal. And Kylie, I enjoy every moment that you speak because you do tell the facts. But when you look at the industrial certification manual on KDE's website, and it says, here's the zip code, here's the pathway that this industrial certification aligns with. And then it'll say if it's a high demand area. The one thing unique about it, and I'm going to use what Dickie said a little while ago about NCCR, not really recognized by a lot of industry, but I'll use something like, I can pull up masonry. Masonry will have 3 certification exams that are required. OSHA 10, which is the generic one, but it's needed in all industry. Put OSHA 10 in there. But then it has NCCER, the basic exam, which is for every NCCER program, which costs money. And then you'll have the specific NCCER test. For this case, masonry. You have another one for carpentry and so on. They also align with their textbooks. Well, if NCCR, and we're paying for those 2 exams, as well as the OSHA. So you have the time and money spent on those. Is there a possibility that we could have a box between on that chart between the certifications required and the high demand that specify which companies in the Commonwealth recognize that certification? Especially, and even have our regions in there. Northern Kentucky region, these are the companies that recognize this certification. And I think what you would find very quickly is that, I mean, if you have an ASE certification in there for automotive or American Welding Society, we're going to have a ton of companies that are going to recognize those. But if you've got some certification that we're paying for with taxpayers' money, and no company, not only in our region but in the state, recognizes it, that's a red flag to stop and say, okay, let's find either a certification that does, or take that certification out, as it's not meaningful and it doesn't go anywhere. Just because I don't think we're going to be able to change the structure of the system, but adding something like that in may get our business partners to the table to actually look at the industrial certification booklet that's going to the innovation board in Frankfurt. And maybe we can get some data in there to make us see which certifications really mean something or not. Thank you.
Thanks, Francis. Lorraine, I know that you always have an opinion about how to solve a problem. What would you suggest? Is there a first step there?
I guess my concern is, I understand what everyone is saying. My thoughts on the logistic industry is that most of the openings are kind of entry-level openings. Even though they're paying it well, it's still entry-level. So that's what the need is in their industry. So they're not looking for certifications because that won't fit the needs that they have. But on the other side, I have the schools and students interested in this career path that are going into it. So if the employers aren't looking for the certifications, and does that mean we shouldn't be sending these kids to logistics classes or not then? Because in my opinion, like, just going to classes is a discipline they're learning themselves. So to get value out of it in many ways, but it's not been recognized in any area, either in the school, it can't be recognized because there's no certs, or in the business, and they don't want it because they want people in to fill the big pool of jobs, that vacancies they have. That's my concern.
Okay.
If I can just kind of add into it, which kind of gets to what Lorraine was saying, I think we have to work together to figure out what is the purpose of all this, right? If the purpose is because we want students to get certifications and they can walk directly into a job, then we have to be really clear about that. And we have to be really clear about which jobs are those, and be very upfront and transparent to students that this is what those jobs pay. And I think there is a sort of a niche for that. You know, that's one outcome. But I feel like the greater outcome is our goal through these CPE pathways really aren't to get the certifications. That's something we have to accomplish. I hold your ears, Kylie, but that's something we have to accomplish for accountability. And it's something that's great for kids to have some kind of skill. But the ultimate goal is for them to get so immersed in that career path that they make connections, that they understand it's something they want to spend the rest of their life doing, or they don't. Because I can tell you in my teaching and learning pathway, I'm glad I might start out with 17 students, and by the end of the year, may have 2 that said, you know, I decided not to be a teacher. I'm glad you decided now, instead of when you spent 2 or 3 years in college. And so I think we have to be really clear what the purpose is, and then focus all our efforts on that. And I do think it's 2-pronged. I think it's this group of getting those certifications that actually mean something, and getting into Northern Kentucky FAME, or, you know, that right after college or right after high school, or it's more about all this variety of careers that we know we need in Northern Kentucky, and getting tied in and understanding themselves, understanding that career, getting excited about it or not, so that they make long-term plans that are meaningful.
Yeah, well said, Karen. I couldn't agree more. I think you're absolutely correct. To have a student engaged in an industry, regardless of if it's a lawyer in the health field, if they're excited about being in the health field and they like legal work, it's the right match, right? You're absolutely correct. Anybody else want to chime in before we close this conversation out?
Well, it may be, oh, go ahead, whoever that.
No, Terry, I have a concluding comment, so please go ahead.
Just real quick, it may be educating the SHRM groups about the importance of including those certifications in job postings, because we can't help them if we don't know what they need. So I think maybe starting with the education of why it's so important, maybe a good start and a low-hanging fruit.
Yeah, thanks, Terry. I was thinking about the SHRM and the chamber, somehow making it easy for them to share that information. So I think we're on the same line there. Tara, do you have a concluding comment?
Yeah, I do. And Terry, I really appreciate you saying that, because it kind of goes along with what I was going to say. I feel like the outcomes from this conversation, first of all, we really appreciate everybody participating. I hope you can hear me, because everybody looks a little frozen. Okay. I think there's two things that kind of happen from this. The first is Kylie does have a timeline, and he needs to hear from us about what is needed, in a pretty short order, a couple months. And so I would like to work with all of you to think about the way that we elicit that feedback from our companies. But then I think further on, that conversation about, working with SHRM, working with the chamber, working with all of our partners about how do we get that constant loop of feedback going about, hey, if you add these certifications to your job descriptions, or let us know when you have a new need. I think that's, and is there advocacy that needs to happen on the legislation side? That's important too. So in terms of the first part with looking at the list today and updating it over the next couple months, we're definitely going to need to talk that through, and you will, ideally what we do is we meet companies where they already are. So industry groups, maybe it's AMIP, maybe it's others, to hopefully to be able to get their feedback without them having to add into new meetings. So definitely we'll be reaching out to all of you to figure out what that process looks like.
Okay, thanks, Tara, and well said. I think that covers everything that I was going to say, and I want to echo what Tara said. Thanks, everybody, for the conversation about this subject today. It's something that I've wanted to have out on the table for the last couple of meetings, so I'm glad we were able to get it going. And as Tara mentioned, we have a timeline that we're going to try to follow up with. And so there'll be more to come, I think, at the beginning of the year on this conversation. But thanks, and appreciate everybody's candor. And I think we made a big step forward. So the last item on the agenda is any new business to the WIB members that we need to start to look at or understand or hear what's going on. Is there any new business from any of the WIB members that they want to bring to the table? Okay, well, that sounds great. Well, it looks like I'm ready to adjourn 3 minutes early, so I'll get a blue ribbon for that. But thanks, everybody. Can I get a motion for adjournment? Okay, I'll make the motion. And accepted. Aye. Thanks a lot for attending. Have a great holiday, and we'll see you at the next meeting. Tara, when is that next meeting for the WIB?
So the next WIB meeting will be the full WIB will meet in January. I believe it is January 10th. It's the second Tuesday of the month in January. And then this group will meet again in February.
Right.
Back to our normally scheduled meeting on the third Wednesday.
Okay. Thanks a lot, everybody. Have a great holiday. Take care. See you. Bye-bye.
Thanks all. Bye-bye.